Hey, what's happening? I'm Patrick Jagir, the Cosmic Alchemist, and welcome to this episode. So in this video I want to talk about the Mercury Retrograde that's going on this month in October of 2020. I was talking to a client, astrology client recently. I got a request to talk about Mercury Retrograde and what retrogrades are really all about. So retrogrades in general get really sensationalized and catastrophized in mainstream kind of pop astrology, whether it's sidereal or tropical. And people, they usually hear a retrograde like Mercury retrograde and you're like, oh no, the sky's falling, it's terrible. People just think everything's going to fall apart during a retrograde. And there's an element of truth in that, but that's not the whole truth. So retrograde doesn't mean things fall apart and you have automatic disasters. Retrogrades are all about going back and reviewing and correcting whatever it is that the retrograde planet pertains to. So in the case of a Mercury retrograde, it's all Mercury pertains to communication, media, intellectual thinking. So intellect is a little island in the sea of the mind. The mind is your personality, your emotions, your memories. It's like your whole intangible self. And the intellect is like the pocket calculator that, figures out problems basically. The intellect thinks that it's God. It thinks that it rules the universe and it can control anything, but that's just pure vanity. And Mercury is considered the prince of the zodiac, where the sun is the king and the moon is the queen. So sun is the soul, moon is the mind, and Mercury is just the intellect. And the intellect is much more limited and almost kind of feeble than people would like to admit, especially people who are very intellectual and who make their living by being very intellectual. There's nothing wrong with the intellect. The intellect is only a detriment when it's out of balance and when it thinks that it's God and it's the master of the universe. And when people think that they can control everything with their intellect, and especially when they think they know what's better for other people because their intellect is so powerful and developed. Modern education and modern politics, that's a huge problem. People think they know what's best for other people, and they think they have a duty to condescend to other people because they're so much more educated and so much more intelligent, we'll call it. Intellect intelligent. There's many types of intelligence. And emotional and social intelligence can get you very far in this world. So intellect's not everything, but it sure is handy, and it can sure help you make a living and help you navigate this world. But it's got to be in balance. You've got to have the heart, you've got to have empathy and, social ability too. Everything in balance in this world. So anyway, Mercury retrograde is all about going back, reviewing and correcting our communications and our thinking. Mercury also deals with media, with trade, travel, but it's mostly what we deal with is communication and our thinking, the way we think. So you look at something like a Mars retrograde. Mars it's our activity, it's our taking the initiative, action, energy. So building. So Jupiter is the higher consciousness. It deals with banking, law. So whatever a planet pertains to, when it goes into retrograde, it's time to go back and heal and correct things rather than taking on new things. And the reason why people think that big disasters happen during Mercury retrogrades, it's because if you take on new things when you should be going back and fixing and correcting things, then they can often blow up in your face, especially when you're not being genuine with yourself. So, if you're being genuine with yourself and with other people, and you're doing things from the heart, then you don't have the big disasters. And if you do have to do something new during a Mercury retrograde, it works out. So that's what retrogrades are really about. So this Mercury retrograde, let me get the chart here. This Mercury retrograde, we're faced with the challenge of going back and basically retooling, rebuilding our thinking, rebuilding the way we communicate. Not an easy time to do this, because there's a lot of anger going around, especially with this Mars retrograde in Pisces, and people feel very fearful and desperate. And the news and people in politics, they make their living off of scaring the shit out of people and making people think that the world is ending. All politicians do this to get support. So they're very selfish and opportunistic. So they scare people into doing the things that they want them to do and they want them to support. So this Mercury retrograde, like I said, we've got that Mars in Pisces. So Mars is desperate, Mars is extremist, it's just ready to fight the world. What was the other thing? The other thing too is that this Mercury is in Libra. So Libra is the sign of politics. Right across from this Mercury retrograde in Aries is Uranus retrograde. So the Mercury goes retrograde at 17 degrees of Libra, and Uranus is at 15 degrees of Aries. So they're within 2 degrees of each other, so they're pretty close. So the thinking right now, what the universe is telling us is that we need to be thinking about basically overturning leadership in our world, and not going out and rioting and having violent overthrows, but going out and overturning our view of leadership and what leaders are and how leaders are supposed to act. Because Uranus is the great revealer, and Uranus overturns our views of things and shows us things that were hidden, or that things that we couldn't comprehend before. And then Aries deals with leadership because it's the first sign of the zodiac. So the universe is inviting us to go back, think about what leadership really is, what it should really look like, who our leaders really should be, what kind of people should they be. And since Uranus is in retrograde, Uranus is getting more intense with its function as a revealer and as one who overturns things. And since it's retrograde, Uranus is saying, go back and consider this. So another aspect of this day of the Mercury retrograde, and that was on the night of the October the 13th at about 9:30 p.m. Another aspect of this is that Jupiter and the Moon were both in Leo. Venus and the Moon were together in Leo. Venus was at 19 degrees, the Moon was at 18 degrees. That was right when Mercury stopped, when Mercury stationed. And within not very long, you had a Venus and Moon conjunction in Leo. So Leo is all about leaders. It's all about executive figures like kings and presidents and rulers, people like that. To me, when I see Venus in Leo, Venus is social activity, it's friendship, it's romance, it's diplomacy. And we're in an election year, so all these rulers are trying to become buddy-buddy with us and butter up to us. And so, the moon coming together with Venus, when Venus is doing this in Leo, it's really making us focus on that whole process. If we insist on seeing politicians as messiahs that we put on a pedestal because we have low self-esteem, then we're going to buy into their games. If we have self-esteem and we see politicians as equals who we hire to do a job for us, then we're going to see their games for what they are. We're going to see all these campaign ads as pretty cheesy and annoying, which they certainly are. So, a lot of different aspects to this. Also, we've got, in Sagittarius, we have Jupiter and Pluto. And so, they're within when Mercury went retrograde on the night of the 13th, Jupiter and Pluto were within 4 degrees of each other. So Jupiter's the largest planet. So it's not quite totally conjunct, but that's pretty close. And Jupiter and Pluto are having effects on each other. So another thing too is when this Mercury station, when it stopped to go retrograde at about 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Sagittarius, which has Jupiter and Pluto in it, was in the 8th house. So the 8th house, it's the house of the occult, of everything hidden, of the unconscious, of deep thoughts and issues, of secrets, conspiracies, the whole bit. And so, Jupiter is the great teacher of the cosmos, and it's an expander. Pluto's a god of the underworld, and Pluto deals with the hidden side of the world and the hidden side of ourselves, our dark side, and the world's dark side. It also deals with things that were information that was hidden from us or things that we were in denial about. So when this Mercury since this Mercury went retrograde, when Jupiter and Pluto were in Sagittarius, the sign of worldviews and belief systems, because this was in the 8th house, this means that Jupiter is expanding that energy of Pluto that reveals things to us, that gives us revelations and disclosures. And the symbol for Pluto is, one of the symbols is the phoenix that dies and burns up and then is born again from its own ashes, rising from the ashes. So, in order for the world to rise from the ashes, and things in the world are very broken right now. Politics, government, the economy, education system, finance, you name it. So, for the world to rise from its own ashes, the world that we know is going to have to fall. And this will be one of the greatest blessings, because the world has run on a lot of lies for a very long time. So Jupiter and Pluto are going to come together in Sagittarius on November 10th at, what is it now? It's 28 or 29 degrees. I think it's 28 degrees. I have to look at that chart. Let me pull that up. Yeah, 28 degrees. So November 10th, Jupiter and Pluto are going to come together. 28 degrees of Sagittarius. And we're really going to, the disclosures, the revelations are going to keep coming. We're going to get a lot in October, and they're going to continue into 2022, because there's a lot that's been hidden from us, and people think a lot of this stuff is conspiracy theory and it's total bullshit. They're just too smart and college educated for any of this stuff to be true. But I was an intelligence officer, I was a conspirator, and I have friends in my circles who did that stuff for a lot longer than me, and they were conspirators. And a lot of things that we think that the mainstream thinks is conspiracy theory is real, because there are many thousands of professional conspirators in this world. So this Mercury retrograde, because Jupiter and Pluto in the 8th house, the house of secrets, in Sagittarius, the house of belief systems. We're going to get a reality check on our belief systems. So, look for more on the, the truth about Benghazi to come out, because there's a whole other story there. That Ambassador Stevens, was actually hung out to dry by the national leadership because it was a dead men tell no tales situation. He was basically the deep state, the corporations and the banks that make up the deep state that control the military and the intelligence services. They wanted to take Libya over and steal all the oil. And they wanted to get Libya into debt with Wall Street banks. Gaddafi wasn't allowing any of that to happen, so they overthrew him. Because our politicians here in the U.S., Democrat or Republican, they got no problem with dictators. They prop them up all the time. So the deep state wanted to steal everything in Libya and get Libya in debt to them. So they overthrew Gaddafi, and that Ambassador Stevens, who died in Benghazi, was helping to transfer and ship thousands of weapons from the defunct Libyan army to Al-Qaeda in Syria, because the oil companies and the banks that partly make up the deep state wanted to overthrow the government in Syria so they could steal all that oil and get the Syrian people into massive national debt. So he was working on shipping those guns to Al-Qaeda in Syria, and the mob, the people who the news called the mob that set the consulate on fire in Benghazi, were actually Syrian special forces who wanted to capture him and keep him up for 4 or 5 days, keep him awake for 4 or 5 days, and put him on TV to confess everything. So, up to the Secretary of State, to the Vice President, to the President, the order was to just let him get killed, because dead men tell no tales. And I know people who were in Benghazi and who watched that whole thing go down, from surrounding rooftops, and there were like 60, 70 people, guys who were like former special forces ready to help them, and they weren't allowed to. So more of that's going to come out. There's going to be more Jeffrey Epstein stuff. There's a lot of powerful politicians, a lot of Democrats, and I'm not a member of a party, but it just so happens a lot of powerful people in the Democratic Party were partying with Jeffrey Epstein and benefiting from his human trafficking ring. And we're going to find out more about the deep state and just how the media's been lying to us, and the lies are going to keep coming and coming, and they're going to keep coming into 2022, and it's going to shock a lot of people. So, and this is happening again because this Mercury Retrograde is all about correcting our thinking and our thinking around politics. And because of that Jupiter and Pluto and Sagittarius in the 8th house, it's all about correcting our thinking regarding these deep, dark secrets that we've been denying, or that we've just plain had hidden from us. So no matter how much that the Democratic Party or the extreme left calls for Google and Facebook and YouTube to censor and suppress and deplatform conspiracy theorists, it's not going to help, because people are onto this stuff. They're on to the dirty deep state business that's been going on in the world for a long time, and the cat's out of the bag, and they've already lost. Another thing about this Mercury retrograde, it's going to come out of retrograde on November 3rd, the day of the elections, just like in 2000. So this is going to be one of those elections where we don't know who the president is. It's going to take into December, and I'm calling it now. I think Donald Trump's going to come out on top with this, because another reason is that the United States is going to have its Pluto return at the end of 2021. So Pluto is going to be where it was in 1776 in July, when the United States was born. So, and Pluto was in Capricorn, the sign of government, when the United States was born. So when we get this Pluto return, we're going to have all kinds of just dirty secrets coming out of the woodwork. And it's going to seem surreal, and it's going to seem like we're in some kind of like a spy movie and like a science fiction movie. There's going to be all kinds of revelations and disclosures. So it's coming. So basically the thing is that with the election, if Joe Biden wins, he would be removed, because Nancy Pelosi's been talking about this whole 25th Amendment thing, which allows Congress to remove a president who's somehow incompetent or incapacitated. Everybody thinks, and she said, oh, Donald Trump needs to get out of the presidency because we need to have 25th Amendment proceedings because his medication's making him crazy. She's not trying to get this in place to get rid of Donald Trump. She's trying to get this in place to get rid of Joe Biden if he wins. And Joe Biden is a fall guy, and they want to put Kamala Harris into the presidency. And Kamala Harris is very disliked and very despicable. I know a lot of black people who hate Kamala Harris because when she was a DA, a district attorney in California, she put thousands of black people in prison just for marijuana possession. So Kamala Harris is not about social justice at all. She's a deceiver. She's a liar. She's like a young Hillary Clinton. I don't think Donald Trump's the best guy ever. Is the best guy ever, but he doesn't pretend he's not an asshole. He doesn't pretend he's nice. Kamala Harris pretends she's nice and she's all about social justice and blah, blah, blah. So if she and Joe Biden were to win the election, it would be going against the Pluto return of the United States. So if they were to win, there would be no revelations and disclosures, and there would be no deep, dirty, dark secrets coming out into the public, because they both work for the deep state. So no matter how powerful or how educated you are, you can't defy the stars. So they're not going to win. It's just not going to happen. So I'll talk more about the election some other time. So that's about it for Mercury Retrograde. I keep craning my head towards the camera because I'm running out of storage. I got a lot of video on this SD card. So that's about it. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, give me a share and a like and a subscribe. My site again is thecosmicalchemist.com. Highly recommend a Vedic astrology reading with me. These readings help you to really see how you fit into your place in time, to see how the astrological events and how the events of the world set the stage for your life, so you can see how you fit into them. You can get a better sense of your hidden talents and how to properly use those talents in the world we're in right now, so you can seize those opportunities and have more of the life that you want. I also do rune readings. Runes are a method of divination that helps you to see deeper into your mind and how to balance your psychic forces. I also have some Qigong videos for sale for download. Qigong is a great mind-body practice that I do every day. It makes you healthier, gets you in touch with the natural environment, and helps you to basically know yourself on a deeper level. So, and it's a great companion practice to the meditations that I give you if I do a Vedic astrology reading for you. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you later. Have a good one.